Good Friday morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to yet another weekly Friday edition of the Alan Fitz podcast, also known as The Chat. Hello out there. My name is Alan Fitz, the host for the podcast this morning, and welcome into the show. And as always, we welcome in our three main listening audiences, those that agree with what we talk about here on the podcast, and they leave positive reinforcement on their social media pages and spread the word on other social media platforms. Those that do not quite agree with everything that we say, but they do leave positive criticism toward us. We appreciate that. And of course, last but not least, the haters. Folks, I've always said this. These are the folks, and we all know who I'm talking about. They can't see the forest for the trees, and we just do not care what they have to say because they're not changing anything. And again, welcome into the show live from our studios here in beautiful Amarillo, Texas. Well, we have a paid podcast show, and these folks have been good to us for the last several years, especially when I owned the radio station back in East Texas. They have always been a proud supporter to advertise during this special time of the year. And this podcast is presented to you by the Tyler County Hospital in Woodville, Texas. They're in Tyler County in East Texas. And we're talking about today on the podcast the Tyler County Dogwood Festival Parade. Now, this is a special event that occurs each year, the first Saturday in April, when the dogwood trees are basically in full bloom. It's not always been that way, and I'll get into that a little bit later into the show, but the parade itself focuses on the celebration of the dogwood. And where all this got started, ladies and gentlemen, is back in 1968 was the very first Tyler County Dogwood Parade. Now, they used to call it the Western Weekend Parade, and this was way back in the 1960s and early 70s. Later on down the line, they decided to involve the county itself. There was originally, and I remember this very, very vividly, back in the mid-1970s, they wanted to change it to the Woodville Dogwood Parade, and it never did go through. And they wanted the folks that were coordinating this event that occurs every year, they wanted to not just single out the rest of the county, so they decided to call it the Tyler County Dogwood Parade, and it has been that way ever since. And one thing, folks, that I want to talk about on the program this morning is that yes, it is the yearly event that is held, again, the first Saturday in April of each year. But a lot of people don't understand that it's not just a one-day event. This is actually stretched out over a period of 3 consecutive weekends leading up to the Dogwood Parade. 2 weeks prior to the actual parade itself being witnessed on the streets, actually a place they call West Bluff Street, coming from the baseball park into town. Parade turns itself at the main intersection in downtown Woodville and goes up to where the Tyler County, or rather the Woodville ISD Transportation Department is. This is where the parade ends because of the huge parking lot that they turn into. But it all begins actually 2 weeks prior to this. The third weekend in March actually starts off, and they didn't used to have this years ago. And before I tell you a little bit more about this, we're going to back up in time during the podcast and explain to you how this parade has changed over the years. Again, the third weekend in March actually now has what is called the Arts and Crafts Festival. And I'm sure a lot of you, and this is a free plug for the folks out at the Picket House restaurant out on the Livingston Highway, Highway 190 west of Woodville. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the Picket House. They are statewide famous for their fried chicken out there. And this is mainly where arts and crafts originated on the third weekend of March. Festivities generally start on a Friday and go into Saturday. Of course, they don't have anything on Sunday. That's a day of rest for everyone. They, in recent years, had expanded, or have actually expanded, arts and crafts up on the courthouse square. And folks, if you've never been to Woodville, it's basically, there's not a lot to Woodville. I mean, you cannot compare Woodville to Amarillo. This is a very, very small rural East Texas community. So everything that the community tries to do is generally held on the courthouse square because they have enough room up there to pretty much accommodate the folks that show up. But arts and crafts, getting back to that part of the broadcast here, it got started about 25 years ago when they began having an arts and crafts showing. And then the weekend after that, and this is where the original name to the Dogwood Parade got started, is Western Weekend. Now, folks, I'm going to say some things on here. And I do apologize for clearing my throat. There is a lot of dust in the air this morning here in Amarillo as this podcast is being recorded. We're experiencing a dust storm, as a matter of fact, early this morning. So, again, I may clear my throat several times during the podcast, and I do beg your pardon for that. The second event, again, was the Western Weekend, and I don't want to offend anybody, but we tell truth here on the podcast. And, it is what it is. It's going to upset some people, and some people are going to say, well, he's exactly right. It is what it is. But Western Weekend has always been something that has occurred the weekend before the actual parade takes place downtown. And what this evolves is basically the ending of the rodeo. Okay, the rodeo starts about a week prior to the actual Western Weekend parade that comes through town. Now they have a parade. They have a horse parade. They used to not do this. They do it now. They have for the last several years. And people come from all over, not just East Texas, not just Southeast Texas, but they come from all over Texas, parts of Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and they ride horses back in the woods. For those of you that have never been to East Texas, it is a pine sapling thicket. A man used to call that a long time ago. There's a plethora of pine trees. Of course, you also have the plethora of pollen, and that's one of the reasons that we moved out of East Texas and came to Amarillo. We don't have to deal with all that yellow pollen anymore. But it's the time of the year that spring is beginning. The weather is beginning to warm up, and sometimes it does, and all of you know how the weather can change. But the dogwoods are beginning to bloom. You have a lot of flowers that are beginning to bloom out in that part of Texas. And they have always had the tradition of riding horses. And they ride them all over the county, as a matter of fact. They have a lot of trail rides that they do. They have hay rides that they do. Now they have a parade, an actual horse parade, that actually runs opposite direction that the actual dogwood parade runs. And one of the reasons that a lot of people have questioned in the years why this is being done in the opposite direction until they finally figured out what they were doing. They are riding out to the rodeo grounds, which is right across the highway from the well-known Hennigan Little League Baseball Park, where the rodeo grounds is at the Tyler County Airport. And a week prior to this, there's a lot of carnival rides that are set up. There's 4-H gets involved, the entire county, all the schools get involved. They come out to the airport, they come out to the rodeo grounds, and they showcase livestock, basically. They have heifers, they have goats, they have pigs. They have a reserve champion every year. They have a champion every year. 4-H, a lot of money, ladies and gentlemen, is put down for this event. And the last night of the rodeo basically runs, if I remember correctly, it's 3 nights in a row. They have a Thursday, a Friday, and then a Saturday night rodeo. And the Saturday night rodeo, folks, is the biggest event. This is where the Western Weekend Parade comes into play through the streets of downtown Woodville, because all of those trail riders, whether they are participating in rodeo events or not, and a lot of them are not, and I'm going to explain to you why this is, and this is where I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I'm going to just have to get point blank and tell you why a lot of this doesn't take place out there. But they are running in the exact opposite direction. In other words, the Dogwood Parade itself runs east, an eastbound direction on Highway 190 through downtown Woodville. The rodeo, or what we have always called for many, many years, and I coined the term horse parade back when I owned the radio station in Woodville several years ago. The proper pronunciation for it was the Western Weekend Parade. On the radio, we always addressed it as the horse parade, because that's all you saw was horses. And you see horses, folks, from all different breeds that ride in this parade. And again, they're riding in the opposite direction toward the airport, because they're riding out to the rodeo grounds. Now, a lot of these folks that are riding in the parade are the same individuals that are riding all over the county. They're riding some of the back trails of the county where the horse trails are at, the hayride trails are at. And I think everybody knows this. I mean, I've even talked to folks here in Amarillo, and I have brought up the Tyler County Western Weekend. And these people up here, 600 miles away in greater metropolitan Amarillo, that's a bunch of horse riders down there that are on the trails and they're drunk. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's not overuse the word drunk for this podcast, okay? Because, after all, we are being paid. We do have a sponsorship at Tyler County Hospital on this podcast. Yes, it is true that, and it's been known by the local residents all over the county of Tyler County, that there are people that do get on horseback, they do ride the trails, and they are drinking. I think everybody has established that, and that's why I caution you at this point, let's not overuse the word a bunch of drunks, okay? Because not everybody that is riding on horseback is consuming alcoholic beverages, okay? There are some that do. Straight up, point blank, it is what it is. Yes, there are some that do. But for the sake of this podcast, let's not say, well, they're all a bunch of drunks riding all in the woods, because that's actually, folks, that's not true. Okay? This is a time that is considered good times in Tyler County. Okay? I mean, I grew up there. I wasn't born there. I was actually born in Houston, but I was reared in Woodville. I went to Woodville schools. I know how the community operates down there, and I can guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, they still operate the same as they did back when I was growing up. Nothing has changed there, except that the new generation of people that have been born and been raised in this time era. Nothing has changed. I mean, folks, you got to look at it this way. This is a very small community. There's not a lot of room for growth, and you know, this is something very big for them. Okay, and this only happens to them once a year. Yes, you do have, again, those people that like to enjoy a cold one, if you will, riding on horseback. I have actually personally seen riders drunk on horseback coming through town. But what the point is I'm trying to make is these people are not bothering anyone, okay? They're not getting out in the middle of the highway, endangering themselves or other people. They're not getting belligerent with other people. They are simply just having a few cold ones. Some of them have maybe a few too many cold ones, but it's still, to them, it's this time of the year. We're celebrating the dogwood. We're having a rodeo, and it kind of goes hand in hand. Now, I will tell you that drinking, they don't sell alcoholic beverages out at the rodeo, okay? First of all, they don't have the licenses to do it. They're not approved by the TABC. Unfortunately, there are some people that do drink at the rodeo. But again, let's not overindulge the word drinking for the purpose of this podcast. It's just what they do, okay? It's their style of enjoying this one in a year event. So the rodeo lasts up till around, I believe they shut it down 11 p.m., midnight, something like that. But it's a fun time where a lot of people will go out to the rodeo grounds. They have, of course, food vendors out the wazoo. You've got cotton candy, you've got hamburgers, you've got cold drinks. Of course, you have soft drinks is what I'm referring to. You have popcorn, you have caramel candy apples, you know, you name it. They've got watermelon out there. I've actually seen that. I've broadcasted many live broadcasts interviewing people at the rodeo grounds. The start of the rodeo, the midweek rodeo, the end of the rodeo. We've actually gone out there and taken pictures. We've put them on on the radio station's website back in those days. And people were just out there having a good time. Tyler County is rooted, ladies and gentlemen. It's a Western type of setting. These are folks that are embedded. They're bodied into an East Texas community. They love rodeo. They love country music. They love, Merle Haggard. You remember the song "Okie from Muskogee." That he sung many years ago. That was actually a #1 hit on the charts back in the early days. That Casey Kasem began coming around and doing the top 40. One of the wordings in that song, "An Okie from Muskogee," is people like to live right and live free. They like to live right and be free. Actually, was his exact wordings that he used in that song. He also talked about they didn't let their hair grow long and shaggy like the hippies in San Francisco did back in that time era. And that's where that wording of that song came from. And that really, people like living right and being free is kind of the tone that is set for Woodville, Tyler County, Texas, of what I can remember growing up there. Well, anyway, the rodeo will end out around about the midnight hour. And yes, unfortunately, and this is not just in Tyler County, ladies and gentlemen, this is anywhere. Something going on that late at night, you're going to have some drivers that are, had a little bit too much to drink to be driving. For the most part, a lot of them will have a designated driver, and they'll go home, sleep it off, get up the next morning, go to church, whatever they do. Well, tomorrow is signifying the first Saturday in April. Tomorrow is April the 4th. It is the first Saturday in April. It's also the third weekend of the festivities. And this is basically, ladies and gentlemen, the grand finale of all of it. And there's two huge events that take place. I'll touch briefly on the one that takes place after the parade because from our standpoint, there's not a lot to talk about with this. It's the Queen's coronation. Because during this 3-weekend event, you have young ladies that are competing for the crown, and this is the title of Miss Tyler County, Miss Tyler County Dogwood Queen. And this is a parade. The parade happens first. She does appear in the parade. But not the actual Dogwood Queen herself appears in that parade. And there's a lot of confusion to that. The Queen's coronation is held at night after the parade. The parade is generally held, that's on that Saturday, the first Saturday of April, which would be tomorrow. The parade generally starts at 2 p.m. and it's generally over in about an hour, sometimes 45 minutes to an hour. Depends on how many floats that they have, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. But the young lady that you see riding in the parade is the past year's queen. She's about to give up her crown and reign out to the new queen, and they have that coronation that is conducted after dark at the amphitheater at the old Kirby High School campus. And once that takes place, folks, then it's over with. I mean, that's your end of your 3-day weekend, your 3-week weekend, and they start preparing for the next year. Kind of like they do, believe it or not, in New York City on the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. As soon as that parade is over, instantly they begin preparing for the next year because it takes that long. And even Woodville, being as small town as it is, it takes them that long as well to prepare for the next year's parade. But the biggest event, and again, this all began back in 1968, and here it is, 2026, is what is known as the Tyler County Dogwood Parade. Now, to step back in time, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit, the parade used to be much, much bigger than it is now. And one of the reasons behind that is back, and I guess the only way to really make you understand this, you heard me coin the term earlier, we live in a different generation of time, okay? And we do. In our generation of time growing up, compared to what I have seen over the last several years of the Tyler County Dogwood Parade in downtown Woodville, Texas, is there's not a lot of push to the parade like it used to be. And that could be because we do live in a different generation of time. if you've heard my podcast dealing with this subject, people don't seem to be, I guess the right word, enthusiastic about things. People have other things that they have to do. They have other things on their mind. And the generation of people back in the 1970s, back in the 1980s, and back in the 1990s are much different than the generation that we live in today. Let me kick it back a little bit further in time, and I'll kind of get closer to the point to where you can understand what I'm talking about. Back in the 1970s, back in the 1980s in Tyler County, there was a bigger concentration of the community as a whole. Little League Baseball was absolutely the number one thing that went on in Tyler County. Because these folks, the community is so small, ladies and gentlemen, they really don't have anything to do except go up to Walmart and go shopping, which, that's not really anything to do, in my opinion. But back in that time era, and we're talking 50 years ago, 50 plus years ago, Tyler County Little League Baseball was the hot brand of the county. There was a Texas Highway Patrol state trooper by the name of Gary Hennigan that was stationed in Woodville, and he took his own money and built what is known as Hennigan Baseball Park. And of course, the new generation of this time, all of that has been changed. They had signage up back then dedicating the fields to the coaches that got out there and volunteered their time. There was a lot of actually DPS state troopers back in that time era that were actually Little League Baseball coaches. They had, their so-called fame and fortune on these big signs behind the bleachers, this, that, and the other. And then when Mr. Hennigan passed away, things kind of went downhill from that point. And the school got involved and bought out some of the fields. They kind of let things run down. The yards, the maintenance of the property was not kept up, and things began to change, and that was with the new generation of time that we're in now, okay? So, and we're not pinpointing this, we're not blaming anybody and pointing fingers and saying, well, you're the one that's the cause of this. We're not doing that on this podcast. We're just saying the new generation of time came out like it is now, and things just began changing. The upkeep of the baseball fields, the property itself, a lot of high weeds began growing up. They weren't taking care of things like they did back in the 1970s. The ground was so clean back then, ladies and gentlemen, you could eat nachos and cheese off of it. I mean, literally, they kept this place spotless. Well, this was during the era of the time that the Dogwood Parade was essentially one of the biggest events that the state of Texas knew. And they had people come in from everywhere to just be a part of the celebration of the Dogwood. I remember they used to have, and these folks came from a neighboring Jasper, Texas, over in Jasper County. They had what was called a shootout on the streets of Woodville. These were a bunch of guys that again, they came over from Jasper, and they had an actual shootout on the streets. Of course, they were using real guns, but they had blanks in them. Now, this is not one of them situations to where somebody really got shot, like Alex Baldwin pulled the trigger, remember, several years ago, and killed the actress on the set. And they drug him and drug him and drug him through the course. That wasn't the situation here. Safety was a number one priority with the Tyler County Dogwood Parade back in those days. And this was absolutely the hit of the Dogwood Parade back in the 70s and 80s, when the good guys and the bad guys from Jasper, Texas came over and literally had a shootout. They had a mocked up shootout on the streets, shooting at one another. Of course, only one man would remain standing of all. And then it got more thrilling, and they all killed each other. And then they laid in the street for about 5 or 10 seconds. They got up, and the parade continued on. And this is one of the things that were just, everybody loved the good guys and the bad guys. And no, it wasn't cops and robbers. It wasn't police and bad guys. They didn't depict any type of uniforms or anything like that. It was just an old Western type, not quite far back as Gunsmoke would be, with Matt Arness and Ken Curtis and Miss Kitty, Amanda Blake, and all that. But it would go back into they had the chaps on, which kept the rodeo sense alive, and they would just shoot the hell out of each other on the street. They would just unload their guns, and they would get back up, and they would start marching, and they would put the blanks back in the guns, and they would go another 2 or 3 minutes, and they would have another shootout. And it was just the highlight of the Tyler County Dogwood Parade. I remember seeing this many, many times growing up there. I loved it. And, of course, you also had the Kiwanis that came in that rode the little bitty motorcycles. And some of those guys, and folks, I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm not getting into the subject of obesity, that, you ate too many greasy hamburgers at McDonald's. Don't even think that's what I'm getting at. But some of these guys were so big. I mean, they had the beer belly and all, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how the motorcycles took them around, but they had mastered in the parade how to run a figure 8 and move forward at the same time. There was never an accident. They never had a mishap in the parade. It was a perfect setup. The floats, they had remarkable floats back in these days. Everything you could think of. And the lead float, and I believe to this day and time, is still present. They have a master of ceremony now. They've always had that. They pull people from, when it first got started, they would pull people from around the county. Now they pull people from out of the county, things of that nature. I've seen people MC it from Beaumont. I've seen them come out of Houston. I've seen some of the floats and the people participating on the float as far away as the Baytown area down by Houston. This is a big event, ladies and gentlemen. But the lead float that always carried the master of the ceremonies, and you would see a lot of floats, and just about every float in the parade back then would have some kind of depiction of the dogwood tree. And, the dogwoods are beautiful. And as time went on, things began to change. The new generation of time came in. And before the changes took place, the parade would last anywhere from 2 to 2.5 hours. Literally, they took that long. I remember growing up, they had a man, and he has passed away since then. They had a man by the name of Don Stevenson. Don Stevenson was the owner of KVLL AM radio there in Woodville. His studios were out of town, out on a little community road called Cobb Mill Road. And Don would come in each year, and he would broadcast this live on the radio, because there were a lot of people. And of course, you got to remember, you had nursing homes back then, you had the shut-ins, They were pretty much confined to the beds. They couldn't get out and do anything. They couldn't actually see the parade happening, but they wanted to hear it. That hometown feeling that they had. And Don took time out because Don was an avid golfer back in Woodville. He also had family in the Tyler, Texas area in Smith County. And Don was always gone on the weekends, basically, and he always took time out to do the Tyler County Dogwood Parade live on the air, just like I did when I had the radio station there in Woodville. And we went a step further because it was before the internet. In the early days, we had never heard of the internet. We didn't know what the internet was. When I was the general manager of the radio station there, and I do want to point out, Woodville does not have a radio station to present date. But when I had the radio station there several years ago, we went a step further. And we got to thinking about, what about these shut-ins? What about these people that have gotten too old? And they're old and feeble. They're wore out. They can't walk anymore. They're pretty much confined to beds, or maybe in the hospital, and can't, they can't even participate in something that they so dearly loved. We decided that we would live broadcast the Tyler County Dogwood Parade there in Woodville through our Facebook channels. And because we wanted those people to be able to participate in the parade. And again, if they were bedridden, or whatever the case may have been, all they could do is hear the audio portion on KZXL. So we decided the last two times that I broadcasted the parade that a matter of fact, I correct myself, I believe that was the last three times that I broadcasted the parade on the air. We also simulcasted it on our Facebook channel. So what happened with that was, we were saying, for those of you, of course, everybody has Facebook. That's the social media downfall of this country because of some of the people that misuse it. But I would get on the radio and I would say, for those of you that cannot be here today, for those of you that want to be a part of this yearly tradition, the Tyler County Dogwood Parade, go to our Facebook page. We are live right now. And right as you went to it, you would see me. You would see my program director, which back then was Lila Kirkland, who is now my wife, Lila Kirkland Fitz. And we would broadcast this live on our Facebook page. And ladies and gentlemen, we had people that had tuned in to our Facebook page that we had never seen before. We first started noticing, and I still remember to this date, Danville, California. I don't know who it was, but we started attracting a lot of people out in the California area. We had started attracting people in Tennessee. We started attracting people out in the Carolinas, and it just became one of those situations. And it was also, and I will admit this, it was my biggest advertising day of the year. I brought in more money in advertising on the Tyler County Dogwood Parade day than I did any other time of the year. Of course, I brought revenue in yearly like any other radio station does, but this was our huge income revenue event of the year. We had just about every business in Woodville proper, and the way that we did it, and Don Stevenson of KVLL did the same thing. We would just read their names out, and we would give them read their names out probably a half a dozen to a dozen times. That the Tyler County Dogwood Parade is being sponsored by such and such, just like this podcast right now that you're listening to is solely being sponsored by the Tyler County Hospital there in Woodville. And I want to thank you folks again. Y'all been good to us over the years, even though we're no longer in Woodville. We're way up here in Amarillo. We're not on the radio there in Woodville anymore. They have supported us, and we thank the Tyler County Hospital for that. But getting back to the originating part of this, it's just a down home type feeling that the Tyler County Dogwood Parade brings. And getting back to the story that I was talking about, the first year, we had a lot of viewers on our Facebook channel. The second year and the third year, people were complaining that they could not get on. It would blink in and out. And no, we weren't having broadcasting problems. The server was being overloaded. We at one time had over 5,000 viewers alone from the start to the end of the Tyler County Dogwood Parade. And back in this time era, and this was before all of this other crap got started, and we had to start blocking the people from talking because of a certain female individual. People would comment. I mean, folks, this was unreal. People would comment on the parade, and we would live interact with people watching the broadcast on our channel. Who is that lady right there that's on top of the float? And as I was broadcasting, I would glance down back and forth constantly, and we would read out who it is, and people would interact what was going on with the Tyler County Dogwood Parade. And a lot of these people, like I say, some of them were in California. They were at that given moment part of the Tyler County Dogwood Parade in Woodville, Texas, because they could see it coming. They could see it live in real time. There was no delay on this. And it brought more and more coverage for the Tyler County Dogwood Parade. And even those people out in California, wherever they were viewing from, they could say, hey, I couldn't make it this year because, whatever the case may have been, but they said they could actually say I was part of the Tyler County Dogwood Parade because Mr. Alan Fitz was broadcasting this live on their Facebook page, and we could hear his voice, and everything was happening just like it was supposed to be. And that was good times, folks. It really and truly was. I miss it, but I don't live in that part of Texas anymore. That's part of my past. I've had to move forward, and that's where I'm at today. But getting back to where it has changed over the years, a lot of the people that put the Tyler County Dogwood Parade in Woodville, Texas together have passed on, okay? Just like those people that went to every Little League baseball game that was ever played in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s at Hennigan Ballpark have all passed away. The new generation of time has come in. And I'm not going to say it's people that lack the coordination that can't put the parade on, because that would be a false statement. The correct way to put this would be a lot of those folks have passed on. They've passed away. They've died. And it's the new generation of time. Yes, some like it, some don't. There's a lot of people that don't even go to the Dogwood Parade. They can't stand it. A lot of people complain on social media. Well, they've got the highways blocked off. We can be to Walmart in 10 minutes. Now we got to go all these back streets. Now it takes us a half hour to get there. And folks, you just have to kind of let that roll off your shoulder, okay? But unfortunately, there is no one that is known or was as well known as I was that broadcast the Tyler County Dogwood Parade anymore. There is no radio station there. There's no one that if they do broadcast it on Facebook, they are not well known enough to broadcast it correctly. They may not know who some of these people were on these floats. We had a sheet that we went by that we actually got from the Chamber of Commerce, which is a huge backer of the Tyler County Dogwood Parade. And that's what we went by, because we were like anybody else. Some of these people, these out of town people, we didn't even know who they were. So we had a lot of communication with the Chamber of Commerce there, the Tyler County Dogwood Festival Committee. We were all pretty much close-knit to each other, and they knew that I had the radio station. They knew that I had the Facebook channel, that I had all the professional equipment to really make this thing visible to people out there that could not be a part of it. A lot of people that graduated high school from Woodville moved on because, there's not a lot of job opportunities in this town. And it wasn't just about the parade. You could come there, the food vendors, the barbecue, it was always there. It's still there today. It's good times for people in Woodville, Tyler County, Texas. The parade now, they're lucky if they can get an hour. A lot of times it's only 45 minutes. And some of this, I feel like, is done to space restrictions. They're having to line up on the side of a major U.S. highway, line up all the way back up to the baseball park, and then if they have to wrap around it, they would basically be on a county road. A lot of farm equipment's back in that area. People can't get in and out. And they've pretty much had to limit, from what we have gathered, and our assumption as well, that they've had to limit a lot of this down because unfortunately there were some complaints. And this is, a lot of people know about this, but for those of you that may not, there was a lot of complaints that were made to the Texas Department of Transportation. There's complaints that have been made into Commissioner's Court. You have a lot of truck traffic that goes, that's U.S. Highway 69 and U.S. Highway 190 intersect, and they really did not have an alternative route to go to, and the time restraints that they're keeping the roads blocked down has been a subject of, a topic rather, of a subject for many, many years. And again, that plays some part in the shortage of backing the time down in the parade, but also you have to remember that it's a new generation of time. And although it is the biggest event, ladies and gentlemen, in Tyler County, it's like anything else. I mean, you have to keep safety in mind. You also have to keep time restraints in line. And before we get off the podcast, I want to bring up something that I noticed over the last several years that has changed with the Tyler County Dogwood Parade, and it's barricades. Now, back in the 70s and 80s, especially way back in the 1970s, you didn't have these barricades that were put up on the side of the streets, on the side of, they're not actually on the sidewalk, they're just off the curb on the right-of-way of Highway 190. They've put these barricades up, kind of like they do in New York City for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Of course, the ones in New York are a whole lot more sturdier. But they had, going back in the 70s, you didn't have any kind of restraint whatsoever. The children were allowed to run out in the street because they throw a lot of candy out off these floats. This is one of the reasons that the kids like to go to the Dogwood Parade, because it's actually, to a small child, it's actually another Halloween to them. They're getting free candy, they're getting suckers, they're getting bubble gum, whatever they're throwing off the floats. And there was an incident many, many years ago, unfortunately, where a child And the child didn't mean to do it, and of course it was nothing more than a freak mere accident. But a child ran out and got under one of the floats, and there was a disaster. If memory, and I don't remember exactly what year it was, it's been too many years ago. But if I remember correctly, the child did not get killed. The child was seriously injured. Literally, one of the tires had ran over the child. The child did survive. He did get back to a normal life. But when this happened, it changed the safety protocols that are put in place with the Dogwood Parade. Now the barricades are up to kind of restrain people, although, and they still do it today, there are some people out there that attend the parade that separate some of the barricades and allow their children to run out. This is constantly being looked upon as a safety issue. The police and the sheriff's office, they do try to keep an eye on this, but unfortunately you can't be everywhere at once. But they have, over the years, they've tried to always put these barricades up to prevent that from happening again. I mean, nobody wants to get hurt, nobody wants to get killed during a parade, but you have to use some common sense. I mean, I mean, we're not saying that these people put a leash around their kids like you would a horse or something and tie them to something to restrain them. I'm not saying that, but there are some that just, are not keeping safety in mind. This is a constant issue that's going on with the Dogwood Parade every year. But for the most part, since the barricades have come up, they have alleviated all of that. And also to bring up, and I don't know if they still do it today. I know several years it was still going on. Well, one of the things that you will notice, even if you attended, were present when the Dogwood Parade was taking place, is people, they had red cups in their hand. And there were vendors that would hand out these red cups absolutely free of charge. And for many, many years, people were asking themselves, why are so many people holding these red cups? And again, not to offend anybody, but there's a little beer present there, maybe a mixed drink or something. So one thing I can say about it is that, it is allowed. You can't have a can of beer open in your hand. That's a no-no. That'll get you in trouble. But in a cup, they can't really tell what you're drinking. But I will say, of all the years that I've attended the Tyler County Dogwood Parade, nobody's ever got out of line because they were drinking from a red cup. So it's a special time of the year for these folks. And honestly, folks, I'm going to man up to the plate on this. Yes, I do miss it. It was a great time in life. It was always fun times to go to the Dogwood Parade. But one thing I do want to cover right quick, and we're almost out of time for the podcast. I brought up earlier about the weather, and very early in the podcast, and I want to get that out right quick before we run out of time. Yes, for the most part, the dogwoods are in full bloom this time of the year, not only in Woodville, but all over Tyler County. But I have seen conditions not very favorable for the Dogwood Parade. We have actually broadcasted where we've had heavy coats on. There, the dogwoods were not in bloom because the weather was not cooperating. But for the most part, if you've never been to the Dogwood Parade on the first Saturday of April, for the most part, okay, if they have not had any extended winter weather, the dogwoods are in bloom. They're beautiful all over town. The pink, the white, a lot of them are pink and white mixed. You have different colors also that do blend in with this. It's absolutely a beautiful time of the year And the Tyler County Dogwood Parade, yes, it does celebrate the dogwood, but folks, in reality, there's always been a hidden gem behind the Tyler County Dogwood Parade that a lot of people don't know. And I'm here to tell you on the chat, on this podcast, that it's the celebration of spring in that community. Again, there is no radio station in Woodville. There is no radio stations that broadcast the parade to our knowledge. Also to our knowledge, there's no media outlets in that community. So naturally, there's not going to be anybody broadcasting it live on Facebook or YouTube or whatever they're using. But it's a special time to those folks, and it means something to them. And it's well known across Texas. So if you ever have the chance to go to Woodville, Texas on the first Saturday of April of each year, it is an absolute community celebration that those folks there are proud of. And again, we want to thank the Tyler County Hospital for their sponsorship of the parade, of this podcast rather. Again, you folks have always been good to us. Thank you for your generous sponsorship again this year. And may everyone go to the Tyler County Courthouse. May they all line up on the streets and say, it's dogwood time. Let's have a parade. And with that being said, that will wrap up this weekly Friday edition of the Alan Fitz podcast, also known as The Chat. I also invite you to go to alanfitz.com. That is my official webpage, and look at the new revamped webpage. Webpage designers have done an awesome job. A lot of AI is involved in this, and it absolutely has a spectacular look. We also invite you to go to our YouTube channel, which is where you're listening to this broadcast right now, youtube.com/Alan Fitz Podcasting for the latest information on upcoming podcasts. This information can also be found at alanfitz.com. So from all of us here in Amarillo, Texas, to all of our listeners out there, as always, this is Alan Fitz saying have a great weekend. And my friends, we will see you here, right here on this channel, next Friday for yet another edition of The Chat. Until such time as we meet again, bye for now.